All right, college basketball fans, one game left in the season, and it's the national title game in Glendale, Arizona, as we get ready for UConn and Purdue to battle it out for the men's national championship 2024. I am TJ Rives. He is Tyler Jones. We're in Glendale, Arizona, and we get ready for this national title matchup just after 9 Eastern time tonight, probably about 9:20 Eastern, 6:20 Pacific in the desert of Arizona here, where the UConn Huskies will either make history with a back-to-back NCAA championship, hasn't happened since 2007, or the Purdue Boilermakers will make history with their first ever national title. And Tyler Jones, the anticipation is building up. The fans have descended on the desert. The Purdue fans especially. We've seen them everywhere on Sunday and Monday. How are you? And we're getting ready to rock and roll tonight with a national title game.
I'm great. I survived staring at the moon with my bare eyes, and so hope the rest of you did the same.
Briefly.
Yes.
You and I both glanced. I said, just glance, and that's it. And we were not in Arizona really in the path of anywhere near even a partial eclipse, I don't think. But, hey, the moon, the stars, will it all align tonight? Did I make a decent metaphorical segue
nice.
there? Will it align for Purdue or for UConn tonight? What are your thoughts as we get ready for this tonight?
I think it will align for UConn. This is their night tonight, as it's been their year, and last year was their year, and maybe their century, their decade, whatever you want to call it. You look at this UConn team, and they've been waiting for this moment. They've dominated throughout this entire tournament run. They did it a year ago, and I think it culminates tonight with their second straight national title. Either way, we're going to get a great story one way or the other tonight.
Amen.
One way, either it's back-to-back titles of total domination of the beginning of a potential dynasty for UConn, or it's Purdue bouncing back from losing to a 16 seed only for the second time ever, and then becoming the second team ever to win the national title after losing to a said 16 seed. So either way, folks, I think we're in for a treat this evening.
That team was Virginia, 2019. We had the privilege of being there on TuneIn and college basketball coast to coast, and now we're on the social platforms as well, as Virginia beat Texas Tech that night in an overtime game. A year after losing to a 16 seed, UMBC, Maryland, Baltimore County, they came back and won the national title. This Purdue team lost to Fairleigh Dickinson, a 16 seed a year ago. Zach Edey involved in the game, Matt Painter as the coach. They've come back around and gotten to the title game. Got a much tougher team in UConn in the way. Anyway, thank you for finding us here on Championship Monday to preview it on the social platforms of college basketball coast to coast. If you're also hearing us live or streaming on TuneIn, thank you for finding us as we're here probably for about the next 45 minutes in a full live preview. The show will again replay and stream on the TuneIn channel, and it's obviously archived on YouTube and on Facebook where you can rewatch the full preview as well at any point in time if you have to leave or if you came back in the middle of it. I'll say that again later on in the show. That's what we're here for. Coming up, we will hear from our colleague Adam Zagoria. Adam does a great job with the New Jersey newspaper aggregate site NJ.com, writing college basketball, an insider for us, as well as his Zags blog, zagsblog.com, insider on college basketball for the better part of the last 20 years. And man, do we need to lean on him because, oh, by the way, besides just UConn and Purdue, we were minding our own business on Sunday night. We had watched the women's title win by South Carolina. Shout out to Dawn Staley and the unbeaten Lady Gamecocks of South Carolina.
We were at the Olive Garden of all places.
So then free plug for them. We go to have dinner after watching them beat Iowa and Caitlin Clark. What a fantastic story Caitlin Clark was. Unfortunately, she gets to the title game 2 years in a row and they can't get it done. LSU in their way, South Carolina in their way, SEC. It happens again. So that was an amazing women's game. We go to dinner. We're getting ready for this title game, trying to have a quiet Sunday night. And suddenly this starts going crazy. The internet starts going crazy about John Calipari. There's nothing official yet. You were just looking at your phone, right? Arkansas has not announced anything. He's not announced anything. But all signs, everything pointing to him leaving Kentucky and going to Arkansas. So we're going to hear from Adam on the insight and who might replace Calipari at Kentucky. But your reaction now about 16 hours later to all of that coming out, please?
I'm surprised, but The more that we hear more information, it starts to make sense. We knew that there was trouble in paradise in Kentucky with how things finished this past season, with them losing in the first round to Oakland, and just their track record the last couple of years. They had underachieved. And you go to an Arkansas situation who's willing to pay $7 or $8 million, who's also got a war chest of, it sounds like, about $15 million in NIL potentially to spend. And you're a guy like John Calipari, who has a great history of taking care of his players, if you will.
Right.
Then it starts to make a little more sense. And
the big thing is the reset. He
yes.
hits the reset button, right? Continue.
Yes, which is what we're seeing as a trend this offseason, years previously, where guys are getting ahead of the curve from getting fired, whatever it may be, and resetting that clock. And now you go to a place like Arkansas where you're resetting, you're wanted, there's a lot of excitement there. I think Calipari will do well at Arkansas. And
again, he is walking away from $34 million, if this can be believed. I didn't say $3 or $4 million. He's walking away from a $34 million guarantee if he stayed at Kentucky and or if they fired him. And he's walking away without Arkansas having to pay a buyout, which is also fascinating.
And it sounds like he's going to take a little bit of a pay cut.
Maybe, but this is one of the most idiotic contracts ever in major college sports, for sure, for the very reasons that I just laid out. With that kind of guarantee and no buyout. Interesting on the names. You're going to hear Adam talking about that in a few minutes on who might replace him. It is a massive story. And the interesting thing is it does happen on the Sunday night. It's not official yet, the Monday, but now we're going to work towards the game, the UConn-Purdue game, and that'll become the bigger story than John Calipari and whatever happens with the history tonight. So Adam Zagoria in a few moments. Some great historical perspective from our buddy Matt Zemek later in this hour, talking about the last time we've got this Donovan Clingan matchup for Connecticut against Zach Edey and Purdue. And the last time we had significant star 7-footers like this, you've got to go all the way back to the mid-1980s. You were not on the planet.
No.
Lunar, solar, or otherwise, you were not on the planet for Patrick Ewing and Akeem Olajuwon. Teenage TJ watched that one at the Kingdome in Seattle. So Matt's going to have historical perspective on that, the matchup, the nostalgia of this game later on. Our colleague Ari Russell will be here as well. He's been with me for the last 20 years of these Final Fours on SiriusXM and on TuneIn. We were there in Minnesota 5 years ago to watch the redemption championship win by Tony Bennett's Virginia team, Ari and me. We were also in Indianapolis and in Atlanta for the back-to-back years of Billy Donovan in Florida, the last back-to-back. So Ari will have some great perspective on that. Also, we'll hear from a member of the Purdue Boilermakers, Braden Smith, their point guard. Didn't play a great game in the semifinal game with NC State. They will be hounding him tonight. How well will he play? You'll hear Braden Smith in the locker room aftermath from Saturday night. And also our buddy Jason Powers is going to be here. He's been my wingman on this college basketball coast-to-coast coverage throughout the last really 60 days or so. He'll be here as part of the preview live on the college basketball coast-to-coast platforms. All right, so give me a little more here for a couple of more minutes. What else, keys, what else are you looking forward to tonight in the preview mode, UConn, Purdue, Tyler?
I am looking at guard play specifically. I think that the thought is that Edey and Clingan are going to kind of cancel each other out, if you will. And so then whose guards are going to play better? UConn has had the best guards in the country. And we hear all the time guards win at March, and that's worked out pretty well for them to this point. What we've seen from Purdue is their guard play has been pretty solid. I think Jones is good, and they got a couple other guys that are very solid players there. But can they do enough? Can they put this team over the top and play the game of their lives tonight? To me, that is what's going to be the difference. Whose guards step up and get the job done as far as that goes?
Well, and again, Edey foul trouble. I think that's a big factor. Is he going to be in foul trouble? Is Donovan Clingan maybe going to be in foul trouble? What kind of whistles early on in this game from
that Purdue-NC State game that kind of really let them play a bit?
Yes, they did. I would agree with that. And so are there quick fouls, etc. Let's talk atmosphere, your impressions being inside State Farm Stadium Saturday, and what we anticipate for tonight in terms of more Purdue involvement, Tyler?
I was very impressed with the atmosphere. That's my first time ever being at State Farm Stadium, and I loved it. Great to see the crowd, all four fan bases represented very well. But I think based on what we saw this past Saturday night, Purdue has been waiting for this moment for how long now? I would expect that this is going to be more of a Purdue home game of sorts tonight, more so than UConn. That they should probably have more people here, that they've been waiting longer for this, and their opportunity to win a national title here and everything. But you better believe this place is going to be loud throughout the night. Should be great to see how it all unfolds here. And I would expect that even the UConn fans, even though they might be outnumbered, they're still going to let their presence be known.
I would agree. They're going to have 15 or 20,000. Pardon the sip live on the air. They might have a little more, but Purdue will easily have 50,000 people here tonight. The whole third level, verify this,
yes,
seemed like it was black and gold on Saturday.
You can still get tickets on Ticket Smarter for about $100 right now.
Listen to you. So we'll just put that up on the screen here, that Ticket Smarter, the Ticket Smarter mobile app, use our promo code COAST20. Secondary market tickets, the get-in price still about $110 up in the top of State Farm Stadium. For the better tickets, $500, $700 in the lower level. Use that promo code COAST20, take $20 off. Your purchase is safe and secure. Ticket Smarter's got the most competitive pricing on the secondary market. Utilize that tonight here. Think smarter, get in the game. Ticket Smarter with our code COAST20. Again, we're live here this afternoon, live coverage of the 2024 Men's Final Four from Arizona. TJ Rives, Tyler Jones. Final thought in the preview mode. We'll be on with a live to tape recap, probably about 20, 30 minutes after the national championship game. Final thought from you as we get ready for this one tonight.
It's been all about UConn this entire tournament. I think that Purdue is a terrific story. It is a success for them to get here. We've talked a lot about them trying to get over the hump, right? How much of a laughing stock that they've kind of been in that sense, the butt of the jokes the last several years. Accomplishment being here, but this is all about UConn tonight. I think we have a close game throughout the first half. UConn inserts their will in the second half. The guards come through. Tristan Newton has a big night tonight. UConn wins back-to-back national titles. I think somewhere in the range about 79-70 is your final with UConn winning the title.
It would be amazing 12 straight. And on your point total, it would be under the 13 or more they've won by every game last tournament and this tournament. 11 straight wins, including a 14-point win over Alabama Saturday.
I will say this.
11 straight, 13 or more, yes.
Purdue is the best team that they faced in this 2-year stretch, I think, going into tonight. And what we saw, think about this, that Alabama team on Saturday night tested them more than they've been tested that entire 2 years.
Tie game with about 10 to go.
So
6-point game with about 7 minutes to go.
If you're Purdue, I think you feel a little bit better about this matchup after you saw what Alabama did on Saturday.
Tyler Jones, thank you, my friend. Good stuff here live on the college basketball coast-to-coast platforms as you join us. Again, whether that is on Twitter at CBB Coast to Coast, as you see on the screen, whether it's on Facebook, on YouTube. We're also streaming on TuneIn on the college basketball coast-to-coast channel right now. The show will replay on that channel leading up as a preview. It'll have a recap show on the TuneIn streaming channel. Long, probably about midnight Eastern time, give or take tonight. We'll recap from the desert once the game is over with Tyler, with Ari Russell, Matt Zemek, TC Martin, and Deshaun Tate also with me on that preview show. Great stuff there, Tyler. Let's go to a conversation earlier this afternoon, at late morning Pacific time, but earlier this afternoon Eastern time. Adam Zagoria, our insider, our analyst, NJ.com and the Zags blog. I wanted to talk to him about the story everybody's buzzing about in and around the Final Four, except for the game. The bigger story right now off the court is John Calipari. What's up with him leaving Kentucky for a rival SEC school in Arkansas? Let's go to that conversation right now as part of college basketball coast to coast. Okay, we were minding our own business Sunday night, and suddenly the word is out about John Calipari and Arkansas. Okay, first your reaction to that.
Yeah, it's kind of classic John Calipari right there on the eve of the national championship game. He's usurping the headlines with this huge story that he's leaving for Arkansas the day before the national championship game. It's definitely, I think, caught everyone by surprise, especially because Mitch Barnhart, the Kentucky AD, had come out previously and said Cal was going to be back for a 16th season. But, I think it makes sense for both sides, right? Like, Cal gets a fresh start at Arkansas. They have a lot of NIL money there. He's got a fan base that presumably will be enthusiastic and fired up about him. They have a championship pedigree, and he's going to try to bring a championship to Arkansas. Probably he brings most of those recruits, the six-man class he had for Kentucky, with him to Arkansas. And for Kentucky, they got to move forward now and try to get a Billy Donovan or a Scott Drew or Nate Oates or somebody to replace Cal.
All right, so a couple of interesting things. Oates just signed a deal that has an $18 million buyout, very similar to Adams' buyout.
Yeah.
Hurley signed a deal last year that supposedly has a $10 million buyout. I don't think either one of those names, what do I know, are realistic. You're great to speak to Danny Hurley. Why do you leave the UConn empire he's built, the money, the New York market's not far away, the Northeast, the Big East? I don't think Kentucky's a bigger lure on that. Your opinion?
Yeah, I don't think Danny takes it. I mean, I think probably if you're Mitch Barnhart, you got to pick up the phone, and especially if Dan wins tonight, he'll have back-to-back championships. But I don't see Dan leaving Connecticut, which he called his dream job and which he's built into, this powerhouse for Kentucky. I don't think that's a winning situation for him. Billy Donovan's name has been mentioned. If you're Billy Donovan, I'm not sure, do you really want the headache of dealing with the transfer portal and NIL? He didn't have that at Florida in the mid-2000s when he won titles. So, maybe he wants it, but it's a kind of a headache and a lot of work. I don't think they can hire anyone with baggage there. I don't think Chris Beard is realistic. Sean Miller is kind of an interesting name to me. I actually think that's not the craziest.
There's baggage there too, though, with Sean Miller previously.
Yeah, it's not the same kind of baggage Chris Beard has.
Right.
Sean's an excellent coach. He's tough and gritty enough to kind of handle the Kentucky fans and the Kentucky situation. So, honestly, Sean Miller is not the craziest name I've heard. Scott Drew and Nate Oates.
There's a name.
Scott Drew's buyout has been reported at like $4.5 million, so it's not obviously nearly as high as Nate's or Danny's. But again, Scott Drew has a great situation in Waco. We were just talking with some of the reporters. I don't think there's a single beat writer covering Baylor basketball in Waco, which is kind of crazy. So he can kind of do his own thing. He's not hassled.
Sure.
If you go to Kentucky, you're under the microscope.
Absolutely.
All kinds of writers and reporters, and the fans are, all over you, and the expectations are sky high. So, whoever takes this job has to be somebody tough and ready to deal with the expectations.
Listen, you've been tremendous. Can we get to the championship game tonight? We got to get to the finish line,
yeah.
UConn and Purdue, and see what happens. I look forward to your coverage, NJ.com, the Zags blog, and being with us on college basketball coast to coast. Happy Championship Monday, everybody, from Adam and me. All right, so that was earlier. I have disclaimed that a couple of times that was earlier. And now look at this. Through the magic of the video, Ari Russell is with me, my wingman, who's been around this Final Four for the better part of 20-plus years that we've been around each other. Right at 20 years, we've been around each other, covering it on the SiriusXM days, now the TuneIn days. I'm looking forward to your insight and analysis in a couple of moments on the game, the UConn-Purdue game, as we do this live on Championship Monday. But I got to get your reaction. We were at dinner last night, and the phone starts going crazy. Calipari not only talking to Arkansas, but is apparently leaving. He's agreed to go to Arkansas and reset. Again, same question I asked Tyler. It's about 16 hours later. What's your reaction to all of this now?
It's shocking that not him leaving Kentucky per se, but leaving Kentucky for Arkansas is kind of like nothing. It really came out of left field. It was not something that I had wasn't on my bingo board or whatever. So it was definitely a shock, but not a shock as far as him leaving. And it's going to be a very dynamic and interesting, because he's going to have to recruit a little differently at Arkansas than he did at Kentucky. He's going to have to get back into that. He's going to have to start doing the transfer portal there, I think. But there is a high pressure. It's a huge fan base, as everyone is saying. They've got it's a basketball school, just like Kentucky is. It doesn't obviously have as remarkable of a history. It's not a blue blood, but their fans and their followers and alumni are very into basketball and support the program through and through. It's highly funded, so he's going to have some great success there too, because he's been successful at every single stop. He knows how to win. I know he hasn't won. He only won one title at Kentucky, but he's still been to several. Well, apparently now Final Fours, wink, wink, because whatever. I don't believe that. He's been to several Final Fours. I'm not one of those people that think that
Well, you're saying they took the one away at UMass. You're saying that they also
right.
No, that was Pitino with Louisville, but he also had Memphis, obviously, in the championship game.
Right.
And Kentucky not only winning a title with Anthony Davis in the Superdome in New Orleans, but they've also been in the title game previously, losing to UConn, by the way, in 2014. What about the criticism while we're on this, and then you and I will get to the game? What about the criticism of the fact that Kentucky has really been a March non-factor since 2019? They've won one SEC tournament game, not even won the SEC tournament. Since 2019, they've won one NCAA tournament game. Yeah. They haven't gotten out of the first weekend. So a lot of their fan base was impatient. Stale is the word getting used. They get a reset. He gets a reset.
Yep.
But what do you make of the criticism that the John Calipari of the last 4 or 5 years isn't the guy that had Kentucky rolling from 2009 to 2019, let's say?
Look, people just have to understand this is a very tough business. I mean, to be an elite coach and to win all those years, and it's very difficult, especially with him really diving both feet into the deep end on the one and done situation. It had success early on. I think it changed a bit because everyone else started being able to adjust to it. You know, it seems like once Coach K and Roy Williams were kind of getting involved with that as well, more Coach K really, it really built up that competition there for him to be able to handle the one and dones. It's very difficult. The landscape is changing. I don't necessarily think he adjusted as fast as they needed to. And, you know, Kentucky has these extremely high standards that oftentimes are kind of impossible really to believe. You know, Musselman was able to take that Arkansas program and bring it back. You know, they had years where they weren't consistently making the tournament. So, you know, Calipari always made the NCAA tournament. His success in that tournament hasn't been there. But that's very difficult. You're getting 18-year-old kids mostly on your roster to try to, you know, and it's a new one each year, try to get them to come back and understand and develop, to understand the landscape. That's a very difficult thing to be able to do every year.
Okay, so you covered UConn at the Big East tournament. Right. I want to move on to the UConn Purdue game in a moment. But you covered them at the Big East tournament. Quick take from you. Right. Even if Kentucky glances Danny Hurley's way, breathes his way, calls him, your reaction?
There's no way in Hades that he's going to take that job. Why would he? You know, UConn is a blue blood itself right now.
Yes,
they're going to be throwing plenty of they have plenty of people, plenty of rich alumni that'll be willing to keep Danny Hurley there for as long as he wants.
And the NIL is going to be strong. You have established yourself with championships. You're looking at a potential 6th national title since 1999, and if they get it, Kentucky has one in the same time frame. And for all the talk about how great the Kentucky job is, and I promise we're moving on, they were last in the Final Four in 2015. South Carolina here in Arizona has been there since then. Auburn in Minnesota, we were there, has been there since then. And then Alabama this year. You've had 3 other SEC programs that are football schools that have been able to make it. So the UConn job, I don't see it either. All right, so speaking of that job and the chance at history tonight, give me a couple of quick thoughts on the chance to be back-to-back. Go ahead.
Look, I mean, I think the vast majority of people following this game and covering this game, and I even think the vast majority of Purdue fans are probably expecting UConn to win tonight. I mean, obviously they want their team to win and think they have a chance. They're here to play. You don't know how things go. We've seen crazy upsets before in this game. You know, thinking back to obviously 1983 with NC State beating, you know, Houston, which Houston, the fact that they never won a national title is crazy with Phi Slamma Jamma, but that's because NC State, you know, knocked them off.
And obviously, Patrick Ewing in Georgetown, you're going to hear
the 80s had it.
You're going to hear Matt Zemek talk more about that Patrick Ewing Houston matchup with Ewing and Olajuwon, but you contemplate the Georgetown teams didn't win 2 in a row. They didn't even win 2.
How about the 85? Like, that was a chance. Like, Villanova completely what you would think on paper outmatched, and they had the perfect second half, probably the best, perfect second half. So if you're really looking at it, Purdue is going to have that Villanova-esque second half because we already know
they got to play an A game.
They got to play an A+++ game.
probably hope at this point that that UConn plays like a C+ game.
Right.
Because if UConn brings anything like a B game, shooting the ball well, defending, they are the champs.
Well, that's the thing.
It doesn't matter what Purdue does.
Well, and that's the thing about them. That's really what the difference is that you can't really just take one element out. They have so many different weapons, and they fill the stat sheet up across the board, rebounds and assists, all of them. If you look at it, it's always every game. It's the whole starting five is going to have double digits. So like the guards are going to have 4 or 5 rebounds. Each guard, everyone's going to have 4 or 5 assists on the team, including Klingon, so like they distribute the ball around. So if one guy isn't on and putting the ball in the bucket, right, someone else is. They all are. So like one person could have an off night and it doesn't matter because Spencer might drop 20, or as we saw the other night, the freshman, Stephon Castle had 20 points and was really the catalyst offensively for them, especially early in that game. So, that's the thing about them. It's not like those Georgetown teams. That Georgetown team had Pat, who was really, and I think they had Sleepy Floyd and Fred Brown. They have some great players, but they just had that one guy. And then if he can be somewhat neutralized to a certain degree and you shoot perfectly like Villanova did, then you can pull the upset off. In this case, it's just difficult because they have so many different weapons, so many ways to attack you, where to attack you. And that's just on the offensive end. On the defensive end, they put so much pressure on you, no matter where it is, on all parts of the court. My thing is that I think for Purdue, the key is I haven't seen too many people do it because I don't think you can do it. But you got to get pressure. I think they got to really try to do some full court. Like they got to really try to full court and make Connecticut play the full distance on both sides.
At least vary it up.
Like put some pressure on them. Like have them, make sure so they don't set. But the problem is that they're so good in transition that if they're breaking presses, they're getting easy buckets. So that's the trade-off. But I think you have to take some type of risk to try to see if it has some type of reward. And Matt Painter's a hell of a coach. Like, let's not just put it. This guy has had some great programs, and he's finally here. And he's not here because he's not a good coach. He's really coached these guys up, and he's really developed Edey as well. So we'll see.
Speaking of Purdue and their chances, after their semifinal win over NC State, this man was hustling, Ari Russell. He was in the locker room with Braden Smith, the point guard of Purdue. Let's get his post-game thoughts and a little brief thought as well on playing Connecticut. We go to that now on College Basketball Coast to Coast.
So you played pretty much the whole game, I think, like other than 2 seconds. It just seems, and so did Zach, talk about that conditioning and how important it was in this game because they were coming at you and you just kept going and going and going.
Yeah, I think just in the moment you're thinking more about other than you're tired, like you're thinking like, hey, we're playing for a national championship. Hey, you're playing for your guys. Hey, you're playing for something so much bigger than just yourself and how tired you are. So I think I just took my mind off that. And there's been multiple games I've played 40 minutes, multiple games I've been playing in the 30s. So it's just something I've been doing. So it's definitely nice to have the trust and confidence in the coaches to keep you in this.
And it seemed in the second half in particular that defensive pressure, especially on the perimeter, really played the difference, I think, in this game. Just talk about that pressure that you put on them on defense.
Yeah, no, Payne talks about it all the time. Like when shots aren't falling and we're turning the ball over, like you got to figure out a different way to win. And we did that defensively, and we held them to 50-something points. I don't know what it was, 50-something points. So I think when you do that, you're going to win a lot of those games.
And finally, I think that this team, obviously, people, the media in particular, we talk a lot about last year, but I mean, just how much fun is this team having? It seems that you guys are really out here having fun and very important. A lot of, emotion, it seemed, when you're hitting big shots and timely shots. Just talk about that emotion.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Paint says that every single day. He says, make your hard work fun. And I think when you make your hard work fun, it makes everything so much easier. You just relax and you just enjoy the moments that you're in. And I think, like, when you go out there, like, I mean, I didn't play great tonight, but, like, just having fun and smiling every once in a while and having a group of guys that just want you to smile, want you to have fun. I mean, it just makes it so much easier and gives us extra confidence.
Well, congratulations and good luck on Monday.
Thank you.
Great stuff with Braden Smith of Purdue there. If you're only hearing us on TuneIn, you may have seen the interview. Hopefully you did see the interview there with him. TJ Rives, Ari Russell back with me for a couple of more moments. And those Purdue guards, they hit some key shots against NC State, but it was really neat and what the Final Four is all about. With all those Purdue fans in the 300 level, they started doing this. I'm gesturing for the tune-in audience that can't see us. They were waving to the crowd with one arm like, yeah, give us more, because it has been a dry spell since they've even been in the Final Four. 1980, not been in the title game since 1969. There are a lot of granddads, a lot of uncles, great uncles that are going to be here with their sons, their grandkids, their nephews, their great nephews, the aunts, the nieces, the daughters, the granddaughters. They're all going to be here tonight in large groups and large families because this hasn't happened in 50 plus years.
One of the things that I think is going to be very important in this game, especially because as we do believe that this is going to be a heavily partisan Purdue crowd, right? One of the key things that I think for Purdue, in order for them to be competitive in this game, is to get off to a hot start, hit a couple threes, have a nice lead, maybe a 10-2, run at the beginning of the game.
Because to your point, how many times has UConn demoralized the other team?
Exactly.
That can't happen tonight.
And you want to make sure that the fans are really pumped up, especially early on, because then if you're making UConn work to have to really get back into a game that's 10-2 or 12-2 or 12-4, something like that, and before the 16 timeout and the crowd is pumped, and when they come back they're pumped again, and then maybe you hit another three and it's like you're up by double digits, 11 points or something. Now you're making UConn have to whittle away. You have the crowd on your side. It's hype. That's the type of momentum and things that keep you in the game. The challenge with UConn is that they don't really get rattled. That's nothing that they're going to be too afraid of. They're going to be like, okay, here's a challenge. We'll make the adjustments. And then we do that. So they have to really go into have at least some level of a lead early on in the game. And I think that's one of the key things, hitting big shots.
Obviously keep Edey out of foul trouble. He is critical to their offensive success, not just with points and rebounds, but with the attention he draws, kicking the ball out to open three-point shooters. All of that goes away, obviously, if he's not in the game, and they don't really have another low post presence at all to run out of, per se.
The thing about him is that his footwork has really improved over the years, especially between last year and this year. His footwork has gotten better, and he does a very good job of staying on his feet and using his feet, and not moving his body too much, keeping his hands straight. So up, using his size and his length to basically not have to jump and do things like that. So he's not someone that really gets in foul trouble that often. He is someone that gets you in foul trouble. So that's also another key. I'd hope that they let Clingan and Edey kind of go back and forth and not have what we had in the semifinal between Hibbert and Odin, where both of them got in foul trouble and were kind of robbed of a 7-foot kind of clash. I would hope that the refs allow them to play like both leagues like to play, is normally more physical than some of the other teams. Big Ten and Big East are two of the more physical teams, physical leagues. So I'd hope that the game is called like they're used to in their conferences.
Great preview stuff, my friend. Are you ready for this?
Absolutely, man.
The last time that the Florida Gators pulled this off, Billy Donovan's team, Joakim Noah, Al Horford and company, you and I were around it, Indianapolis and Atlanta for the repeat. Now here we are 17 years later. We were around UConn and Houston in 2023. Now we're around UConn going for it tonight. I think you feel like I do. We're about to see a repeat here tonight, and history once again. For, in this case, another Hurley. It was Bobby Hurley as a player with the Duke teams in 91, 92, and now it's Danny Hurley as the coach with UConn. Coach Ari, great stuff.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, as always, here with me. There is Ari Russell. All right, now let's get a little more historical perspective on the big man versus big man matchup as we rock along live on College Basketball Coast to Coast. Our colleague Matt Zemek, a great national historian of college basketball for really the last 30 years or more, writes for the Trojans Wire USA Today website. He and I went over the matchup, and in particular the big men, like Ari and I have been talking about, Zach Edey and Donovan Clingan, and what it means. So let's go to that preview mode conversation that I had with Matt right after the semifinal games, but it's only appropriate to pull it out here on Championship Monday. So the national title game is set. It is UConn and Purdue. And Matt Zemek, I know you are reveling in going back over the nostalgia, what this might or might not remind you of to have these two number one seeds squaring off. What comes to mind immediately here when we start looking ahead to Monday night?
Well, I know you have a few bullet points to mention, but the thing that immediately hit for me is that this is basically a recreation of the 2005 Final Four that was at the Edward Jones Dome in St. Louis. You had two heavyweights in their semifinals playing teams seated several notches lower, and you went into that Final Four 19 years ago thinking it's got to be North Carolina and Illinois on Monday night. It would have been a shocker if it was anything but that. And you go into this Final Four in 2024, we all went into it thinking if it's anything other than UConn and Purdue, the 2-1 seeds battling it out on Monday night, it's going to be a shocker. And here's the other comparison with 2005. You have, a storied program. North Carolina played that role in 2005. UConn's playing that role in 2024, going up against a Big Ten program in search of its first ever national championship. Illinois fell just short in 2005. Purdue going for that first national championship in 2024. And that, so the two semifinals in 2005, they were duds. Now today, Alabama actually played a really good game. That second semifinal was high-level basketball. The first game, NC State-Purdue, that was a dud. But then, in 2005, after two not that close semifinals, you had the classic championship game of Carolina and Illinois going right down to the wire. So hopefully we'll have the parallel is going to continue in 2024 with Purdue and UConn.
You're selling it hard, but right now UConn has just been so good. I mean, it's 11 straight games of 13 points or more. And this did not look like, I know this is your point, it did not look like it was maybe going to be a double-figure win because Alabama was right there. But UConn hit their threes, they defended well enough, and they win again going away. It is remarkable. All right, so another thing that just dovetails is right after that, the Florida 06-07 Gators of Billy Donovan, Joakim Noah, Al Horford, Corey Brewer, they go back-to-back. We now, for the first time since then, have a champion not only come to the Final Four, but win the semifinal game and have a chance to go back-to-back. Put it in perspective, please.
Well, the other panelists on our college basketball coast-to-coast shows here, they've talked about how this UConn roster got turned over a lot from last year.
Right.
Whereas the Florida Billy D teams, Billy D and the boys, that was pretty much an intact starting five that all came back the same. And I mean, Billy Donovan did an amazing job to, pull off back-to-back. If you do back-to-back, Billy Donovan did it, Mike Krzyzewski did it, John Wooden, of course, before that.
That's a pretty elite class.
It is a pretty elite class, but if Dan Hurley does this with different rosters, not a defending champion running it back intact, not the way 2007 Florida was, doing it with a very different roster, I mean, that would be just a mind-blowing achievement for Dan Hurley.
Again, I love Matt Zemek's insight here. So you started racking your brain in the aftermath of the Saturday night semifinals. All right, what's the last big-time center against big-time center national championship game? And tell me what you came up with, Matt Zemek.
Well, in 2017, the last time the Final Four was here in Glendale, we had Persian McCarnowski against Kennedy Meeks. Okay, that's not the last elite.
I don't think that's elite. Right.
No. So, to find two elite centers, the best of the best, going up against each other in a title game. We had Roy Hibbert against Greg Oden, Georgetown, Ohio State in 2007 in Atlanta, but that was a semifinal.
Right.
So for a title game, it's slim pickings. You would have to go back to 1984 in the Kingdome in Seattle, Hakeem Olajuwon, Patrick Ewing, the last really elite big man matchup in a national championship game, not a semifinal, title game. You have to go all the way back 1984, 40 years ago.
I've heard of those two guys, and that was a big deal back then. All right, the floor is yours for anything else, nostalgia, etc., and what you're looking forward to. Again, Danny Hurley's got a chance. It's not just him, but he's got a chance to join Billy Donovan, Mike Krzyzewski, and John Wooden with back-to-back titles. So that is striking to me. 11 straight wins by 13 points or more has never been done before. What is it with these guys? They always would come out here in the West Regional and win. 20 years ago, they beat Alabama, by the way, in the West Regional Final, where in Phoenix, not far from this arena. They're back 20 years later, they beat Alabama again. What is it with these guys coming out west? It doesn't matter in Texas or in Arizona.
Yeah, there are a couple historical trends with UConn. One is that UConn goes through Phoenix at some point on the road to a national title. Did it in you mentioned 2004 and beating Alabama specifically in the Elite Eight to get to San Antonio, then beat Duke, and then beat Georgia Tech to win that national championship. But in 1999, the first one, Jim Calhoun, he goes through Iowa and then Gonzaga in the regional. Gonzaga beat Florida on that last second shot when the magic of Gonzaga and March Madness really began. So UConn went through Phoenix in 1999 as well. Now, UConn didn't win the national title in 2009, but won a Phoenix regional that year, one in this stadium, in State Farm Stadium.
They love Arizona.
They love Arizona. And then, but the other and bigger historical trend with UConn, TJ, is that UConn has lost one Final Four game, and that was 2009 in Detroit against Michigan State. UConn is the ultimate closer. Like UConn is the Mariano Rivera at the Final Four, because like North Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas, they've made like 20, 18, however many Final Fours. They've made almost 24 Final Fours, have some national titles, but a pile of losses, double-digit losses. When UConn gets to the Final Four, UConn wins it. That is just a remarkable thing, and we'll see on Monday night if the Huskies can do it yet again.
Unbeaten in the title game, that is for sure. Listen, great nostalgic stuff. They're going to clear all of that up back there and be ready for Monday night for UConn and Purdue. We're excited for that. Can't wait. Look forward to being with you on Monday night, Matt Zemek.
It's going to be awesome.
So obviously now we are to Monday, Championship Monday, and Matt will be part of our post-game coverage here as part of college basketball coast to coast. Again, you're seeing the video show. The post-game show will be a live-to-tape shortly after the game, live-to-tape show on TuneIn, on the TuneIn mobile app, free to hear. Find the college basketball coast to coast channel. It will be streaming on that channel. Our post-game thoughts, Matt, Ari, Tyler, TC Martin of the TC Martin Show, Deshaun Tate of Tate's Take, and 92.9 The Game in Atlanta. They will all be on with me tonight after the game, probably about a 20-minute recap on TuneIn. That will also be out in podcast form. Not a video show. It'll be out in podcast form tonight and obviously tomorrow to recap the national title, whatever happens with the history. I am merely TJ Rives. We're here for a few more minutes live from the desert, Glendale, Arizona. Tonight it is Connecticut and Purdue for the 2024 national title, history one way or the other. And if we're making history tonight, I got to bring my Tampa Bay wingman all the way back in West Central Florida, where I left. It seems like a month ago, but I left it like 4 days ago. Is my Tampa Bay brother from another mother. Hello, Jason Powers of the Powers on Sports podcast and the Insight of College Basketball Coast to Coast. You and I have done this once or twice. January, February, March. You've done a fantastic job. I could not do the preview show and not have you be part of it. So the magic of technology, here he is on the video show, and you're hearing him on TuneIn as well. My friend, welcome, and how amped are you for whatever we're about to see tonight at State Farm Stadium?
First off, have you seen your solar eclipse yet? Did you gotten your eclipse?
Partial eclipse in Arizona. I believe it's partial in Florida, but they've been getting the full eclipse down the middle. And these two 7-footers, here comes the segue, Powers. Watch this. Yes. These 7-footers will block out the sun later tonight at State Farm Stadium. Zach Edey and Donovan Clingan.
Yes, I'm very happy we've got a 1 versus 2 basically matchup in the bracket here. Most people think these have been the two best, most consistent teams all year. So I'm glad we're getting a final here to reflect that. And like you've talked about, very rarely have we had a classic big man matchup like this. It's been some time where we have two legitimate offensive and defensive forces that are both 7-footers that are skilled and are not just bit parts. They are primary figures in this game.
So much has been made here in the last 3 weeks about UConn trying to do this repeat. We haven't really broached this today. How much pressure do you believe they're under? How much pressure do you think they're even feeling to try to finish this off? One obstacle left to finish it off. Do you believe they're feeling pressure, the Huskies?
I do. I think there'll be a moment tonight, again, like in the Alabama game. Give them credit. They stepped up. That game got tight late. But again, this is for all the marbles. This is for history. This is for the dynasty. You get put in the rafters in stores forever if you win 2 in a row. If you're those guys, Clingan, those guys that were there last year. So yes, I think there's going to be some pressure. I think Purdue now, all the monkeys off their back. They've won a semifinal game. They know they're the underdog. Everybody in America thinks Connecticut's going to win this game tonight. I think this is setting up for a classic here tonight. I think we're going to have a really good game. I know everybody still thinks Connecticut wins. but I'm going to have a different view here. But I think, yeah, I'm with you. I think all pressure is still going to be mounting on these guys. Say what you want. They're still 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. And as you know, 75,000, when all the chips are in the middle of the table, sometimes pipes burst.
Yeah, from the pressure. And again, we can't convey enough for those just joining us. They easily had 35,000 or so, and it may have been 40,000 or more. The entire third ring, Jason and audience, of State Farm Stadium, tens of thousands of seats, was all Purdue fans. I can only imagine with what we've seen Sunday and Monday with Purdue black and gold from every direction in and around Glendale, downtown Phoenix, it's going to probably be 50,000 tonight and maybe 55,000. So anything they do is going to get the roars of the crowd going. Any bad call by the ref is the thundering boos. Let's just see how that plays out. I don't know that UConn gets rattled ultimately. All right, I got to get your quick take. The big story overnight Sunday into Monday off the court is John Calipari. How surprised are you that when everything had quieted down, that the crazy coaching carousel cycle of Andy Enfield leaving USC and then Eric Musselman leaving Arkansas for USC opens up the Arkansas job, which wasn't open a week ago, and John Calipari is going to apparently walk through the door and take the job. They haven't made it official yet. Give me your reaction to all of that, and what does Kentucky do? Thoughts?
You and I have talked for 6 weeks now. I thought an early exit by Kentucky, that there was going to be an opportunity here for there to be a separation, whether it was a mutual, whether it was however they dressed it up, and it went a zigzag way to get there. But we've gotten there. Again, they didn't pay the buyout. Calipari's beating the posse because the posse was coming had they had another bad year next year. So. I know I've been talking about this for 5 or 6 weeks that I thought first early exit was going to be an exit for John.
You did repeatedly.
And it worked out. Again, it wasn't as smooth and as clean as maybe we thought it was going to be, but it happened.
How surprising that he stays in the SEC. And Arkansas has some tradition, obviously has a ton of NIL money. Yeah. How surprised are you that he's staying in the SEC?
Well, that's probably the biggest job left. Had there been another job, again, a job we talked about, Indiana. I thought if Indiana had maybe made a move, maybe John Calipari's on their radar, but they keep Mike Woodson. Again, he probably didn't want to sit out a year. He probably wanted to, obviously wants to keep coaching. He's getting older. He's 65 years old. People don't realize he's 65 years old. So does he want to sit out a year? Probably not. Probably the best job left. I mean, in theory, that's probably the best. That's the best job that's available now. So, and they're willing to support basketball at Arkansas. They've got a winning tradition, have won some titles. The Tyson chicken connection with he and that guy are really tight. As
apparently,
far as money for the
Jeremy
NIL.
Jones was apparently very involved in the discussions on Sunday too about NIL and about being able to pay those premium players for their name, image, and likeness. All right, what does Kentucky do quickly? What do they do? Where do they turn?
A couple names to keep an eye on. Mick Cronin, UCLA. He's a Midwestern guy. He's got some Patino roots, which we know Patino's still got some pull in Lexington.
Formerly at Cincinnati, right across the river.
So keep an eye on Mick Cronin. They'll probably make a phone call to Scott Drew, I'm sure, if they have not already done so.
Had two different people that don't know each other say the same thing to me, that Mitch Barnhart, the athletic director, is absolutely going to be in touch with Scott Drew, and it's maybe Scott Drew's job to turn down. The two people both said essentially the same thing to me on Sunday night and Monday morning. So let's see if it is Scott Drew, and he's got a couple of big-time recruits that can come with him that haven't come to Baylor yet that can come with him. Might that be the name? You don't buy into the Danny Hurley stuff.
I don't because one, his father and his family are up in the Northeast, and I think Danny enjoys that closeness and that proximity to where
New York market, the Big East. Absolutely, you're not in agreement. Is it Nate Oates and an $18 million buyout on a deal that the ink dried on about 15 minutes ago? Is it Nate Oates of Alabama?
I think he'll be the third or fourth on the list. I think if it ends up being 3 or 4 guys turn him down behind the scenes, maybe. And again, if this drags out into later in the week, because remember, The NBA regular season ends on Sunday this week, and maybe they don't want to make a big hullabaloo with Billy Donovan and the Bulls with games left to play for the Bulls. Maybe they wait till the end of the week, and if you don't hear something out of Kentucky by the end of the weekend, it's maybe Billy Donovan's in the mix come this time next week.
Interesting. Great names. All right, I've got about 60, 90 seconds. Let's wrap it up with this. You just teased. You don't think this is a repeat for UConn, Jason Powers of the Powers on Sports podcast? You don't think so?
I'm taking Purdue. I think you're going to see I think outright winner. I think you're going to see, here's the two things. Bench play. UConn gets nothing off the bench as far as scoring. Purdue had two guys. They got 15 points out of Gillis and Kaufman-Renn in the semifinals. Yep. I think look out for the accessory parts tonight. The Lance Joneses, the Gillises, the Kaufman-Renns. If they can get 25 to 30 points amongst those three guys, I think they're going to be in this game. And again, if Braden Smith, he doesn't have to play great, but just don't get eaten alive by Stefan Castle. Don't turn the ball over, stupid turnovers. I know he was a little clumsy the other day in the semifinal, but if Braden Smith can keep the ball, they've not lost a game all year, Purdue, with 13 or less turnovers, like 28-0. If they keep it under 13 turnovers, this game's going to the wire, and I'm taking Purdue to win the game.
And you've been preaching they haven't had a game where they've really been tested. They were sort of tested down the stretch with Alabama, but put it away. I just am not getting in front of the freight train, brother. I'm not getting in front of the freight train for this one.
And from just a probability perspective, the probability says you can't win 12 straight games by double digits with no tough game. Every champion has usually had at least one game in the tournament where there's been some diciness, and they've not had it yet. The law of averages say they're due, and I'm taking Purdue to take down the Huskies.
You've made a tremendous argument. I believed in UConn from the time that March has begun. I've seen nothing that shakes me. I don't even think they have to play a great game. I think if they're just good tonight, they're the winners, and it's back-to-back. And again, only 3 times since John Wooden will this have happened. Mike Krzyzewski and Duke, Bobby Hurley, Christian Laettner, 91-92. I was in the Metrodome that night when they beat Michigan and the Fab Five for the national title. I was in the Georgia Dome. I've been privileged. This is my 22nd Final Four to be at. I was in the Georgia Dome for Florida over Ohio State back-to-back. I think I'm in State Farm Stadium tonight for history again for UConn, back-to-back 2023, 2024. Let's see what happens. Listen, you've been great throughout college basketball coast-to-coast coverage. We want them to find the Powers on Sports podcast. I always have loved your insight. You've added a lot to what we've done. We've got one game left. Let's just hope it's a good one tonight, my friend. Closing comment.
Next year. I'm going to hopefully be poolside with you and Adam Zagoria, courtside with you and Matt Zemek and Tyler Jones.
We'll see.
Done a great job, great content, great different perspectives and environments you've put yourself in, me, and I appreciate the opportunity to do all that we've done. And anytime you need me, you got it. Purdue cuts down the nets tonight in a stunner.
He's the only one calling that on our coverage here, and there's not a lot of people outside of the Midwest or Big Ten country believing it. We will find out. Thank you, Jason Powers. Great stuff, brother.
You got it.
We'll see you later. All right, so that'll wrap this preview here from College Basketball Coast to Coast on the video, on Facebook, on the CBB Coast to Coast Twitter handle, and on YouTube, also the TuneIn channel. Reminder again, after the national title game, audio recap of the title game, whatever happens, on TuneIn, streaming, and on podcast, wherever you get podcasts, College Basketball Coast to Coast. We won't have the time, the opportunity, the availability to do a full video show, but you'll get the comments of Ari, Tyler, Matt Zemek, TC Martin, Deshaun Tate, and yours truly on that audio show. TuneIn streaming channel, College Basketball Coast to Coast, as well as podcasts. Wherever you get podcasts, you can hear it on demand, obviously. We'll recap it. That will probably be up around midnight Eastern time, give or take 9 p.m. Pacific time with our recap show, and obviously play it till your heart's content overnight, tomorrow, etc. in the recap mode. Again, thank you for being with us all throughout the college basketball season here on the College Basketball Coast to Coast platforms. One game to go. I believe it's UConn. I believe we're looking at a back-to-back history-making win for Danny Hurley, Donovan Clingan, all of these guys. Tristan Newton, who won a title last year with his team, Alex Karabon, who won a title with his team last year. Back-to-back for them. Let's see what happens. Let's see what Purdue has in store. Let's just hope we get a good game. Let's hope this is not. I don't think anybody believes it's a Purdue one-sided win. There are a lot of people that believe it's a UConn one-sided win. Let's see if we get a good game tonight as well. In any event, thank you for being with us here on College Basketball Coast to Coast for the Monday National Championship preview recap show when it's done, again on the TuneIn channel, College Basketball Coast to Coast, and in podcast form. So we're not completely done. Recap show is there. We're done for now prior to the game. Enjoy UConn and Purdue from College Basketball Coast to Coast.